All right. Good morning, everyone. Evening. I know we probably have people from all over the world, so I'm pleased and thankful that you're all able to join us today. So, in the interest of time, we'll kick things off by way of introduction. My name is Mick Brown, one of the founders of AIIA, and pleased to be here today. Talking about like some of the opportunities that we have to move this ball forward. So. Just quick history for myself. I've been in the US since 2004. I've been on a mixture of different visas, the L1 blanket, then I switched to the E3, via the Australian Free Trade Agreement, moved to an H1B. I maxed out on that next month, and I realized a couple of years ago that if I didn't do something, to solidify my status here, then I would have to leave. So I found out about EB-5 a couple of years ago, and it seemed to me to make the most sense, in terms of achieving a permanent residence and ultimately green card here. So I think what you'll find, just listening to the panelists today, is that there is a very diverse group of backgrounds represented here. And that's really how we ended up as the American Immigrant Investors Alliance. It's a Washington, D.C. based 501c4. The purpose of this organization is to advocate for the interests of EB-5 investors from all around the world. And really you can think of us as, providing a seat at the table, as a lot of decisions are made about the way forward for the EB-5 program. So moving on to the next slide, I was fortunate enough to be introduced to the other panelists here, back in March, by a mutual contact, and I was very impressed with the work that Ishaan and Rajvir and Shawn, amongst others, were doing, to sort of really take up the issue and some of the challenges that EB-5 investors were facing, regardless of the country of origin, regardless of their regional center investment. I think we all, felt that we had a common purpose and that we needed to stand up this organization, in order to be heard. So with that, I'll hand over to my good friend, Shawn, to summarize, like what we're going to be going through today, and, look forward to the back and forth, over the course of the next hour.
All right. Well, thanks, Mick. I guess I'll just quickly introduce myself as well. My name is Shawn. I'm based out of Toronto, Canada. I've been here better part of 2 decades. Got my own reasons for applying for EB-5. There's for me personally, there's family down in the US, and then of course there's the type of work I do specifically. There's greater participation, for greater opportunities rather, for the sector that I work in, for me to have a presence in the US. So, and among other things, motivators for me to apply for the EB-5 program. I found out just like many others, when you are looking at the potential pathways, this one struck out as a unique pathway that I thought I was in a position to take advantage of. And also, like, the whole story at the time was sounded very convincing. There's the aspect of the investment aspect, and the way that the funds are deployed and in projects through the regional centers. It was a bit of challenges, as I think most of you will agree, to initially navigate through, but eventually I was convinced this was really the best move for me. So, well, here I am today. So today's agenda is really to sort of primarily introduce ourselves, and make introductions to a partner of ours that we brought in today, Crossroads Campaigns. You're going to hear from them towards the end, because they're going to really get into the meat of the matter with regards to the specific strategy and action plan that we have. So, we will talk about who we are. We'll talk about our mission. We're going to talk about our current legislative priorities and administrative priorities, and the rest. So you do hope you stick around till the end. Our mission is really to inform, educate, and advocate on behalf of EB-5 investors. Our primary and perhaps the only target audience that we work for is you, the investors. What we found, over the last couple of years is that the issues and challenges facing the EB-5 program seem to have gotten quite complex for a lot of us to navigate individually. There's lots of ups and downs, as even you guys would agree from both the investor aspect as well as the participants in the industry that really there's been a lot of ups and downs with regards to reauthorization and a number of issues, visa reallocation, you name it. So we felt like we really needed a platform to allow us to engage ourselves in the conversation. And obviously what was missing, we found from the landscape, was an organization that truly represented EB-5 investor interests. We formed the bedrock of this industry, and it was only relevant that we ourselves had a voice. We put ourselves through some quick education on really how the format of nonprofits are structured in the United States, and really the fact that they're a very effective vehicle to advocate for ourselves. So we were convinced at the time, Ishaan, you want to take me to the next slide, that the 501c4 format really was a desirable format for us to get organized under. So the problem, as I sort of highlighted, was that lots of ups and downs in the program. I think the days of the simple days of just putting an investment amount and waiting 5 years and to get your investment back, and waiting 12 months or so to get your investment, your application adjudicated, seemed to be sort of in the rear view mirror. We hope to bring those days back. Definitely, that's really what we're fighting for. But there is a concerted effort needed to get us there. So when we started having discussions with a lot of stakeholders, specifically in Congress, in Senate, and the House, we quickly realized that there's a perception out there in Congress of it's undereducation of EB-5. So in a lot of cases, there's just simply a lack of even acknowledgement of this program. And then where there is an acknowledgement, there's this tendency of perception that there's this cash for visa type of program that only serves certain interests. So we really found it challenging to sort of navigate through that. And we were convinced that if we're going to have any kind of impact, we had to address those core issues. As individual investors, we don't have the same political rights as citizens and residents would have. And really that's where an organization like the American Immigrant Investor Alliance would come in, through the nonprofit C4 format, allow us to advocate for all the issues that affect all of us. So I spend a lot of time on the strategy, that we're going to deploy here over the next 1 or 2 years. So this is a strategic action plan. We actually put out a newsletter here early last week, so I'm expecting a lot of you received that, read that. If you haven't opened that email, certainly please do go through it. But we did highlight our strategic action plan here for the next year, and maybe a little beyond that. And that looks like the following. So essentially, what we find is the greatest challenge behind both the program integrity, the longevity of the program, the stability of the program, is the perception building that we need to really address. So we're looking to launch a campaign that's specifically addressed at the congressional relationship building with senators and congressmen. We call this the Faces Behind EB-5 program. And the goal really is to put a human touch and put a human face behind the EB-5 investor program, which really isn't possible from any of the other participants who are in the industry. We feel we're the right force for that. And that is going to be an important aspect of our objectives here. Clarifying the cash for visa perception that, I did speak on that earlier. A number of you have submitted incredible narratives about yourself, your personal stories, your personal lives, as well as the important projects that you're invested in. Some of these projects bring incredible benefits to the American communities that they're a part of at really no cost to the US taxpayer. So, we plan to build up some project narratives around these and really some individual stories that a lot of you have kindly agreed to be part of, to really sort of clarify the perception that, there is an really important social and economic benefit that this program brings. So we're going to talk about a lot of this towards the end. Our friends from Crossroads Campaigns will sort of take us to a deep dive of the strategy that, we're proposing to put in. And, what we're looking to get out of it really at the end of the day is these very, very important face-to-face conversations with, members of the Congress, members of the existing current administration. And then, you're going to see that in the form of a lot of heavy social media campaigns, education, newsletters, and such. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Ishaan for the next part.
Hey everyone, so my name is Shawn. I'm an EB-5 investor from India. Been working in the industry EB-5 industry for a while now, And I've witnessed a lot, and I'm hoping with this organization we can really take things forward. So in the next 2 slides, we've essentially highlighted some of our long-term priorities, and it will change as we gather feedback and as we work with different members. We want to ensure that we really advocate on behalf of existing EB-5 investors and ensure everything from quicker processing times to them, as well as just the ability to have due process as well. And I'm going to leave, and this is on our website as well, so you can take a look at it. I am going to focus on one specific administrative priority that we see in the short term that benefits everyone, including existing investors as well as prospective ones. The Biden administration is going to publish a rule in the next few months to expand premium processing for immigrant petitions. We are hoping to get I-526 added to that. I believe they're currently discussing EADs on that, but we do want to get 5 to 6 processing added to that. I think, just as someone who invests $500,000 or $1 million into the US economy, you don't want to wait longer than a year, 2 years to be able to move to the US or to get your green card. Premium processing would really help existing investors in line, would also help the industry bring in prospective investors. Again, shorter timelines benefit everyone. So I feel like that is a goal that we can all work towards. And I feel like that is something that we can definitely advocate for. Let's talk about why us. Why does our group make sense? Look, the truth is there are other nonprofits out there. There are other nonprofit groups out there representing EB-5 investors. However, they have represented only a small subsection of the community. We are a diverse set of investors from different backgrounds, from different walks of life. We want to represent all investors, regardless of their country or birth. When we advocate for something, we don't want our actions to hurt one community of investors over the other. For example, even when we're working with the political consultancy, we did our homework before we chose to work with them. We spoke with a number of them. We looked into hiring a lobbyist, as some other groups have done in the past. But we feel a grassroots campaign of us investors, of us changing the perception of what EB-5 program is, the impact that it has on the US economy, we feel that that is the best way to do it. And we are the best people for the job. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my fellow board member, Rajvir, to talk a little bit about the elephant in the room.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ishaan. So my name is Rajvir. I currently study economics and government at Harvard. I invested in EB-5 because of the atrocious green card backlogs India-born applicants face. So yeah, addressing the elephant in the room. The EB-5 Regional Center program is expiring on June 30th, absent congressional authorization. And as we approach June 30th, one of the following scenarios could happen. So the Grassley-Leahy-sponsored EB-5 legislation could be enacted. There could be a short-term extension of the program on June 30th. However, even if there's a short-term extension, the problem just gets kicked down the road, and it will be, again, panic season for us in September. And then there's the possibility that the program lapses on June 30th, and that lapse may be temporary or permanent. Now, one of the most frequently asked questions we get is, what can I as an investor do to avert this lapse? And the fact is that there are only 18 days left until June 30th, and the big players of the industry are already working on competing proposals that will reauthorize the program. So what can investors do? What can AIIA do? So we have been working with various attorneys in the EB-5 space to prepare a plan B, so to say. And renowned EB-5 attorney Irina Rostova has agreed to work with us in our litigation efforts. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Irina.
Thank you so much. So I'll talk about what we can do if the program does not get extended on June 30th and there's a lapse. As you know, the other parties to this call have mentioned, if there is a lapse, we don't know how long the lapse is going to be, if it's going to be temporary or permanent. So I was really focusing my efforts on trying to figure out a way to protect the existing investors if we don't have an extension on June 30th. So one of the efforts that we're going to launch is we're going to put together and file a lawsuit in the federal court with multiple investors as the plaintiffs. The lawsuit will seek injunctive relief from a federal judge And the relief is going to be asking to put all existing I-526 petitions in abeyance, as well as petitions of investors that are pending consular processing and adjustment. Because technically, if the program lapses on June 30th, USCIS can start denying petitions. We don't think that they're going to start doing that right away, but they could after a few weeks, because if there's no extension of the program, they need to start clearing those petitions out of their system and they can start denying them. So the federal lawsuit is going to seek injunctive relief asking for temporary abeyance, which is just basically going to buy time for investors. Either we're going to wait for new legislation to come through or a solution from USCIS. In this lawsuit, we're going to give a lot of different proposed solutions. One of them is going to be to use direct EB-5 visa numbers towards EB-5 investors that invested into the Regional Center program. And so we intend to use this lawsuit both as a way to try to buy some time, but also we're going to be using it as a way to communicate with USCIS, because we all understand legally we may or may not prevail. So the lawsuit is definitely not going to guarantee a protection of the existing plaintiffs, but having this lawsuit on file, having the complaint that outlines all the different things that USCIS and DHS could do to either grandfather the existing investors in or reallocate visa numbers, I think it's going to be helpful in terms of just communicating potential solutions. So one thing I should mention, hopefully we don't have to resort to this lawsuit, but again, if there's no extension on July 1st, we will be inviting all the investors who have pending I-526s or consular processing to participate. And the goal here is going to be to make it have a minimal cost passed to the investors, because there are going to be costs associated with litigation and research and the lawsuit. So the idea is to gather multiple plaintiffs so we can just charge a few $100s as an administrative fee from the plaintiffs, and that will allow them to be in the lawsuit and will cover the cost of this litigation. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Irina. We certainly hope it doesn't come to that, but it's good to have a plan B just in case. So now let us briefly address the proposals out there to reauthorize the program. While these proposals get a lot right, including long-term reauthorization and much-needed integrity reforms that protect investors, they do suffer from significant flaws. Example, lack of judicial review, restrictions on judicial review. Some of the proposals will force investors to appeal their denied petition to the Administrative Appeals Office before going to a federal judge. Now, the AAO is a black hole for petitions that have been denied. They can possibly sit on a case for a year, maybe more. Other proposals include visa set-aside provisions. So the visa set-aside provisions, what they do is basically reserve green card numbers, visa numbers, for new investors. And what that basically means is that getting in front of line of existing investors, because there are a limited number of visas available. At AIIA, our guiding principle is that we are against any changes that will lengthen wait times for obtaining a green card or repayment of investment capital for investors already committed to the process. Now, when people talk about all these bills, legislation floating around, investors are not on the table for these discussions, and which is why we need a voice that represents all of us investors in this political space. And to help us with that, we have John Miyasato from Crossroads Campaign, who are going to be our political advisors, basically. Shawn, take it away.
Okay, great. Can you all hear me fine? Great. Thanks, Rajvir. That was a great introduction for, I think, what we're going to try to accomplish to do. Crossroads Campaigns is a full-scale, full-service political and campaign consulting firm, and I do believe that the American Immigrant Investor Alliance is in a lot more of a unique position. I think many of you have alluded to it already. Shawn, Ishaan, Rajvir, Irina, Mick, all of you have talked about this from the angle, which I think is the most important one, is the investor side of it all. And I think that the misperceptions that are out there around the EB-5 program are due to the fact that people don't know the investors, right? And they don't know you as human faces. And I think that the more that we can start to share and give examples of both stories from the investor side, people who use the program as a way to do good things, and then also from the people who are affected by your investments. There are a lot of U.S. citizens who have the ability to vote and who can also meet with congressional members who can also be out there advocating on your behalf, talking about and touting all of the good things that you've done with your investments in many of their communities. So I think that AIIA is in a unique position because you are the investor group. You are you are the faces of the EB-5 program, and I think that that's the power that you have. So we can go to the next slide. Like I said, we do a lot of different kinds of work, both in terms of advocacy, communications, grassroots operations, training and facilitation. But because of our work over the years, which we can go to the next slide, we've been able to work with a lot of different clients. And starting in 2007, so about 14 years ago, was when our first foray into doing work around the issues of immigration kind of started happening. So we help to manage two organizations that directly deal with immigration issues. One is Immigrants List, and the other one is Immigrants List Civic Action. Immigrants List is a political action committee. Immigrants List Civic Action is just like AIIA. It's a C4 organization, which can do advocacy work both in Congress and on the state and federal level. And I think we've been, I'm going to talk in a few minutes about some of our accomplishments, but because of our connections with them, we have a lot of connections with AIIA members, including folks like Ira Kurzband, Denise Sabah, a number of people who work on EB-5 issues, but also are leaders in immigration law. We also run something called the Center on Civic Engagement, which works with probably about 60 or 70 nonprofit organizations around the country that are focused around immigrant rights issues. Throughout the years, since we started doing work, I started doing campaign work back in 1992 with President Bill Clinton's campaign back then. We have built a lot of ties and a lot of relationships with many members of Congress over the years, mostly on the Democratic and the kind of progressive side. Some of those that you might know are people like Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren, who is, the person who chairs the immigration issues on the Judiciary Committee, Chuy Garcia, who has a new bill called the New Path Forward, Pramila Jayapal, who's out of Washington State, who is the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, but also where immigration is one of her top issues that she cares about. So I think that we are in a pretty good position for us to be able to help bring some of those members of Congress, both on the House and the Senate side, to be able to meeting with you all one-on-one. And I do believe that some of the perceptions that they have can get cleared up as they meet with many of you on the individual level. We can go to the next slide. We've been able to do a lot over the years in terms of accomplishing a lot with many different members of Congress, and also around some of the different issues of immigration. We've through our work with Immigrants List and Immigrants List Civic Action, we've been able to focus on promoting a lot of different legislation, endorsing a number of different bills, pushing them, and advocating for them. We've also been able to really help because of our endorsements of many different members of Congress. As you can see in this list, we've endorsed a lot of different members of Congress. And our win rate is probably anywhere from 60 to 70% in terms of the people that we endorse to then win their campaigns and are now members of Congress, either in the House of Representatives or on the Senate side. So for us, those ties are really important, and I think that they will be important for all of you also. In addition to that, we've also done a lot of what I would call public perception campaigns, where what we've tried to do is to make sure that the public is really educated and members are really educated around the issues that we work on. So in this case, it would be the EB-5 program, and that some of the views that people have on the EB-5 program need to be cleared up, right? And again, I think that the stories that both you and the people that you affect, the more that we can have those stories be out there and telling those stories, I think you're going to be able to make a major difference in how people feel about the program. We can go to the next slide. So I think the next, hang on one second, I'm just going through my notes. Yep. So the next slide is, so here's the thing about this whole thing. I believe that as much as there are 18 days left before the end of June, what I've seen so many times over on bills that need to be reauthorized is that they often get temporary reauthorizations first, and then that kicks the can down the road a little bit, and then they kind of get worked on again. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if there is a temporary reauthorization of the EB-5 program. And then in some ways that's great for us, because as AIIA is getting started, I think there are some of the issues that you want to affect in a full reauthorization of a bill. And this actually allows us to have a little more time to work on some of those topics. So I think that, I think what will happen in the near future is you will see a temporary reauthorization. I don't know that it'll be with at exactly 18 days, but I think you're going to see a temporary reauthorization that happens pretty quickly. And then they'll kick the can down the road a little bit for them to really be able to debate and tweak the EB-5 program and the policies that are there, which again, I think gives us some time to really get in there and start, advocating for the things that you all care about. I think the other part that we really want to look at is not just connecting with members one-on-one, but also building up the ability, not just for this team of people at AIIA to do it, but for all of you to do it. Right. So part of this plan would be to do trainings and make sure people understand how they can start doing more meetings with members of Congress. For all of you who are investors, which you all are, and the programs that you invest in, it does affect, people's districts, congressional districts, and their states if you're a senator. And so we want to make sure that we're creating those ties between those of you who have, let's say, for example, investments in Chicago and in the state of Illinois, to make sure that you are not just that you're doing that, but then that you're also being able to meet with those members. So like being able to talk one-on-one with a Chuy Garcia, and then also with Senator Durbin, right? To make sure that they see the faces of people who are doing these investments in their city and their state, right? To make sure then that they go, oh wait, this is a good thing. This is not, there's the controversies that are here are not about that. We need to make sure that these people's rights are taken care of, but also that we encourage them to do even more around this program. The other part is to build just kind of a grassroots advocacy that's outside of just the investors, right? So educating the public, the spillover that's going to happen by creating these like narratives and these stories will spill over. And I want to make sure that the general public, people who live in the communities that you're investing in, that we get them to become advocates also. And I think that what you'll see is kind of a growing movement of folks, not just yourselves, but all of those people who are affected by your investments, be able to become more involved, right? And then advocate on your behalf also. So in some ways, it becomes a two-way street for the people's community. So you're not just putting money into a community, they're giving something back to you too, right? Which is help you. Go to the next slide. So I think there's a few steps that we're trying to go through in the near future. So we want to create a bunch of different marketing materials. And also, I think the other piece that's really important is that we got to create, I know that that AIIA has started creating a way to collect stories, but we want even more of them. We want a story for every single one of these districts, for every single one of these states that you live in, because every single one of those stories is not just a story about you. It's a story about the people that you affect and the things that you invest in. And I think that that will be one of the most important things. The other thing that we'll do is really start thinking about who do we go after? Which members of Congress? We want to build more allies, not just in Congress and the Senate, but also outside of Congress, right? Those people who are influencers in their communities, faith leaders, business leaders, who also have the ear of congressional members and senators. We can go to the next slide. And so some of our next steps, I think I kind of, a little bit of this is some of this is a little bit of a reiteration. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that in the long term, that we not only get the EB-5 program fully reauthorized, but that we're able to also get some of those changes in the policy that you're looking for. So I think that's one critical piece. I think another piece is that we're going to start doing a lot more one-on-one meetings with members that you'd all be invited to, both in terms of asking you all as investors to meet with them, but also hopefully getting some of their constituents to meet with them. And then the other piece is that we really want to create a broader communications plan that brings in other folks. So building a coalition around you investors that advocates on your behalf, not just from members in Congress, or, I mean, obviously there are many different immigration lawyer members that we can bring in, but there are lots of different organizations. There pretty much is an immigrant rights group in almost every state in the country. And so having those organizations also be your advocates and creating closer ties between you and them, I think would also be important. And I think that's is that my last slide? Yeah, I think that's my last slide. So I'll hand it back over to the folks at AIIA, but I'm very excited about being able to work with all of you. And I think that the more that I understand the program and understand the intricacies of it, I do believe that there are lots of ways that you can accomplish the goals that you've set out because you are the consumers of this program. And I think people forget about you when they're hearing about the program. They think about it in the abstract, right? And instead, I think we need to just kind of to humanize this whole thing, both again, in terms of you as investors, and then also the people that you affect. So thanks for taking the time. Like I said, we're really excited to be working with you. I'll hand it back to the AIIA folks.
Yeah, hi there. My name is Akanksha Corona. My family and I, we are British citizens, and we moved to the US in 2017. We came here on H-1B, and then just looking at the uncertainties that all of you have looked at, we decided EB-5 was the right route for us. And today we are in 2021. Obviously, all the plans have just gone haywire. Our daughter starts university this year, and the plan was that by now we would have had a green card. Unfortunately, we are still awaiting our results of I-485. And the current circumstances for the family are that she's being considered an international student. Because she doesn't have an SSN, she cannot apply for any of the student loans. And effectively, we are sitting here having to work out, funding what is equivalent to a mortgage on a house right now for the next 4 years. So I was, we, just like all of you, we were going through a lot of issues, pain points, just by being in this program as I started to listen to various calls. And I just decided that there has to be something that I should be able to do. And that's how, I decided to volunteer for AIIA. I got on a few calls. I started to understand what they were doing. And believe me, they've not even asked me to say this, but, one of the things that really stood out for me was the fact, that the interests of the investors, especially the existing investors, that lens to me was really, really important. And that was the reason for my commitment to this organization. So, the story that I told just now, if this was the only story, we would be in a happy place, but it isn't. Every single one of you on this call or anybody else who's invested in EB-5 will have a story with many, many pain points. But unfortunately, people don't know about these stories. So, as you've heard many times on this call, we need to grow our database of stories. We need to know stories from people who are outside, who still haven't moved in to US. But we also need to know stories of investors who are in the US, who are contributing to American society through their investments, doctors on J1 or H-1B, workers who are frontline workers in the fight against COVID, tech executives who are running massive projects where their companies are contributing a lot to the US, people who work on critical infrastructure projects. The list is endless. So every story is important. And, it's really, really important that, we get those across to people who need to hear them. We need volunteer efforts for creation of newsletters, conducting advocacy, website and graphic design, nonprofit compliance, community outreach. The list is endless. And probably there is a lot on there, that we haven't even included. So we really need you to put your thinking caps on and say, if we need this organization to grow, how can we make it grow? And then, we need to raise money. An organization and an effort like this cannot happen without money. So AIIA is a very young organization. It needs the financial resources to meet all its advocacy objectives. And, working with a successful political consultancy firm like Crossroads isn't going to be cheap, Every dollar counts. And the single best way that every investor can help this program is by focusing on how we can help fundraise. The ripple effect, the blast radius is always much bigger than the object that creates it, which means, for me, that even the smallest action can make a huge impact. The 3 T's of philanthropy, time, talent, and treasure. That's what we can contribute to this organization right now. It's absolutely essential. So if you want to make a difference and you want to make our voices heard, please volunteer your time. Help us advocate. Use your talents to help the organization reach a wider audience, and help us raise money through direct donations and fundraising efforts. And with time, we can help grow our base and bring in more investors. As I said, behind every application is a family. There's a story that needs to be shared with members of Congress. When you put your life savings into a program and then you have to play this game of endless wait, who else can narrate this better than us? Our stories need to reach senators, and we need to take this forward and ensure that we get the visibility that we deserve. And as we change perceptions and we provide a window into our lives and how we can be impacted by things such as USCIS processing delays, unclear rules in the game, program instability, and many other pain points we experience, we'll be joining voices from many other groups which are trying to make this program efficient, better, and stronger. So for me, really, the easiest and probably the wisest thing and the only thing in my control right now is to be an advocate for myself. And, I implore you to do the same. Today, at the end of this call, if there is one takeaway that you have, you really need to sit down and think, what is it that I can do in my capacity? And there is a lot that you can do now that we have an organization, for us, the investors. So your membership in AIIA is an investment that will help fund the grassroots advocacy efforts. And all of us have talked about it many a time on Telegram groups. We spend so much time debating things, wondering what we can do. This is our chance. This is our moment. We need to do it. This will ensure that we are kept abreast of developments in real time, and we have the ability to help educate lawmakers and their staff on the considerable benefits that we, the EB-5 investors, confer on the US economy. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Ishaan to complete our presentation and head into Q&A. Back to you, Ishaan.
Thanks, Akanksha. So before we finish up, I just want to quickly give everyone an update as far as where we are in our organization and where we see just some of our rough milestones. Of course, all of this is subject to change as we begin our advocacy efforts. We formed our organization just 2 months ago. We've opened a bank account, and I can tell you, compliance as a nonprofit is not an easy thing. All of us, I will say, that are involved in this have devoted our time, energy, and have contributed money to this organization. And we're really hoping this will go a long way in terms of the impact it will have. We hope to ensure some kind of reauthorization of the program. Even in this 18 days, we will try what we can. We will try to obviously advocate for long-term reauthorization as that happens as well. We want to advocate for premium processing for 5 to 6 applications, and we hope that will come to fruition. Again, as the industry says, no guarantees. We can't guarantee results, but we really will try our best effort. All of us will. And we do want this program to be better. We want this program to be better for existing investors so that prospective investors also have a positive experience. And I will say this just to conclude our presentation. I have been working in this industry for the last 3 years. I have my permanent green card. I got it a month ago, and I'm done with this process. And quite frankly, I could walk away. But I care about the investors that I've helped invest. And I want to make sure that they get their immigration process through, that they get their green cards, and they get their money back. I don't want to trash talk any of the industry groups or say anything negative, but the truth is that they represent their members, their paying members, and their needs. And that's perfectly fine. That's just the way the world works. But this is why we need an organization that represents all investors. And if we all work together, and our community is diverse, I will say that, and we all come from different walks of life. Some may be skeptical about what we're doing, and I understand that. But we have to start somewhere. And to the industry members who are on the call today, this is my plea to you. Look, together, all of us, immigration attorneys, issuers, various other stakeholders, we can improve the program for both current and prospective investors. if we bring down processing times for our investors, if we ensure that the current investors have a positive experience, they will tell their friends, they will tell other people. We want to change the perception that this is indeed a crooked industry, like the media makes it out to be. All of us can work together, change the minds of members of Congress, advocate for positive change, and we can do something good out of this. The EB-5 can be used for great things, revitalizing neighborhoods, building important infrastructure to this economy. At the end of the day, we're all immigrants. We're all trying to achieve the American dream. We all want to secure a place for us in this country. So let's work together. We, all of us, are stronger together. By working against each other or working against different groups or different investor communities, we aren't going to be successful. And we as an alliance can help bring these different groups together. So with that, I will open it up to Q&A. I hope that you will all check out our website, go through what we have. We're going to keep in touch with the newsletters. We will also send a recording of this webinar out so you can forward this to other investors and other members of the industry. And yeah, I think that's it. If anybody else has any closing comments, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just want to thank everybody from both the investor community as well as, I see a lot of names, frankly, in the attendee list that I'm familiar with, that people that work in the industry for having taken their Saturday mornings or wherever you happen to be in the world, taking this time off to attend this. It's really, again, frankly, Ishaan, the messaging you conveyed towards the end really sort of appealed to my heart too. Like if I was sitting on the fence of this today, really the messaging is important. And it doesn't matter whether, if you're on the sidelines just simply thinking, if you have, just trust in the power of faith and, just take the leap of faith with us. And, this is really going to have a direct impact on the quality of our lives for the next few years and honestly for endless other lives for years to come. So thanks for arranging this. Yeah, so I think I see the question here pertaining to, I guess you're saying specifically for the reauthorization effort. Look, Raj is our point person on this particular matter. We're in touch with really the both groups of the industry that are sort of working on their competing proposals with Congress on reauthorization. At this point, I would say we do believe there's, or at least history would indicate that there's a strong reason to believe that, there's probably some sort of temporary measure that's put in place, which simply means that the proverbial can is just simply kicked down the road. So I think, could we have started this last year? Yes, but you know what? This is still incredible timing from the perspective that, if we get started today, we do believe that, we do acquire a seat at the table with regards to the permanent reauthorization measures. So to that extent, all of the above that have been mentioned, like you might think that, so in my mind, there's a tree that sort of leads to the ultimate promised land. So all the efforts, they may seem indirect, the volunteering, the fundraising, and the stories, they may seem indirect, but they're going to have a direct impact on what it is we're trying to do here. And stay in touch with our newsletters, visit our website, because we will, at least for the next foreseeable future, as things stay sort of dynamic with the landscape, we intend to provide continuous and constant updates on the state of affairs as far as reauthorization is concerned.
Yep. We have a question from Dilip. In fact, two questions that John can address. John, could you talk a little bit about so whether the House versus the Senate, what matters more in terms of advocacy, and what are your thoughts on advocating with the media?
So in terms of House versus Senate, I think they're both important and they both play different roles, right? So even though the House, so because the Democrats control the House, it's still a narrow margin, but you still want to make sure that all of those Democrats, and especially more of the progressive ones, are in line with supporting the EB-5 program. Some of them are, some of those members are exactly the ones that might have misperceptions about the program, and we got to clear those up. So I think making sure that we build a set of allies in the House who are not yet allies, or maybe they're just on the fence, I think is important. But in terms of getting any legislation finally passed, yeah, it's going to have to be at the Senate side also. I think the interesting thing about the EB-5 program is that I think it cuts across partisan lines, though, right? Like, I mean, it's definitely one of those immigration pieces that we've seen can be more bipartisan. It's just the two extremes on either side are the ones that are a little more critical. So I think I think, again, the more that we can have all of you be advocating and people in from your investment areas advocating, I think you're going to see people. I don't see why people wouldn't come around and be more open and excited about the program. So I think from the House and Senate side, I would have very different strategies for why we would approach them. In terms of the media, I think it's the same thing. I think part of that is where we're talking about creating better public perception over the program, right? I think that, for example, if the local news is carrying a story where someone is investing in a blighted community to do some extra development work in that community specifically, that's going to not just benefit high income people in the community, but also low income people in the community, that's a great story. And then all of a sudden having faith affected, and all of a sudden that community is getting better, and you've got the pastor out there talking on your behalf saying, hey, this is a great investment, we're really excited that people from other countries are coming in and doing this in our community. That does nothing but benefit you. And I think that those are the types of stories that we want to get out there, and we want to be able to push more. And I really believe that, again, if you had come to me from a different angle, if AIIA had come to me from a different angle on the program, on the EB-5 program, not from the investor side, because of the kind of work we do, we probably wouldn't have done it. We probably wouldn't be as interested or excited. But I think for me, it's about humanizing you as people and the stories that you tell. And from each of the examples that you've given, I think that most American citizens and voters would be like, oh, I get that. I understand. You've got a kid who's going to school. You want to make sure that they are able to take advantage of these programs. And that's where you've invested. And that's what you're trying to create a life for your families. You've invested in this program, and now you're going to school for a graduate degree. That's great. You know what I mean? Like, those are all things that we want to be able to promote and to explain to both members of Congress and the public. And I think you're going to start seeing a lot of goodwill.
And just adding to John's point, thank you for that, John. I would say even in the House, Democrats have only a 5-seat advantage, and we need to get everyone on board if we want to ensure that the EB-5 program has legislative backing. So thank you for that, John. I see another question, people asking about how are we going to balance the rest of the world's wants with Chinese investors who might benefit from different policies. So I would say at AIIA, our guiding principle is that we don't want to benefit one community by taking away from someone else. We want to make sure that when investors invested, they made a good fit investment with a specific timeline. We don't want to elongate that timeline in midstream, in the middle of the process. So that's what we advocate for. And other policies which affect all EB-5 investors in a positive way, we're going to advocate for that, definitely. That's our guiding principle here.
Yeah, and I actually that question intrigued me as well, because I had my own thoughts on that. So you've largely covered that. I think when it comes to pitting one group versus the other, you really have to sort of, get your roots right and really kind of focus on your core principles and your guiding principles, as you say. The fact of the matter is, this is a unique program with regards to the immigration and investment nature of it. But let's not forget the investment nature of it. The investment principles world over dictate the same universal principle that the rules of the game do not change midway once you've made the investment. The fact that there's an investment program out there with the largest economy in the world, where rules are changed midway, does not send a good message to the rest of the world's investment community. People may not realize it, but this program is an important structure of the capital markets the world over. Yes, it may have a small percentage impact, but at the end of the day, it's a noticeable program, with B's in front of it, billions of dollars attached to it. So it does not send a good message when you change rules midway through an investment cycle for anybody.
Yeah, and I actually want to respond to the China question because a couple of people have brought it up and asking about the Chinese investor community and how do we reconcile what they want. The truth is we are against country cap removal. Like, quite frankly, that is the thing. We believe that anyone who signed up for and made an investment had an expected investment timeline in mind. And I will acknowledge that members of that community were not fully informed as to what the wait time was. We've seen the online chatter about this. But at the same time, we also don't want to hurt the community that has already invested. And country cap removal would hurt that. Yes, it would bring people first in line. I will acknowledge that. However, it would hurt people who already have an expected investment timeline and expected immigration timeline. So we do not support that position. However, we will try to find any kind of middle ground if possible. We've already made outreach to the Chinese investors. We actually have a couple of groups that we're in touch with, and we're looking to essentially work and find some middle ground that will work for all investors. From a visa relief or whatever it is, we will advocate for that together. And like I said, we are all stronger together and not working against each other. With that, I also want to respond to Noreen Hogan from CMB's point about reaching out to our regional centers. Look, the truth is, as someone who works in a regional center myself, all of us issuers support reauthorization of the program and we support advocacy. However, we need issuers to engage with us. We need them to spread the word about us, help us build our investor advocacy database. Donate to us if you can. I understand you have groups representing you, but we'd ask us we need a seat at the table as investors. And we'd ask you and your colleagues to support us and our goals so we can all together advocate for change to this program.